Okay, good evening. We're ready to start the meeting. Wednesday, May 8th, 2024. This is a public budget hearing, special meeting of the Board of Education. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item I'm going to mention, it's not on the agenda, but there is going to be a Meet the Candidates event on Wednesday, May 16th from 6:30 to 7:30 with more information to follow. Approval of the revised agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Next up, the public budget hearing. Comments from interested citizens. And then, Patrick, do you want to do a review before or after?
I think it would probably beneficial to go through it quickly before. For
Absolutely.
those that may not have been tuning in to all the other budget development meetings.
Okay.
And if you have been tuning in, some of this may be a little redundant. You may have seen this before, but I'll go through things quickly.
Absolutely. We have one person signed up to speak, so as soon as you're done, then we'll move to that portion.
Great. So this is our budget hearing, our statutorily required budget hearing, one of the few meetings that actually is required in the budget development process. Superintendent at the last meeting, when the board actually adopted the budget on the 18th of April, talked about the budget priorities, safety and security, maintenance of programs that support the needs of students, and providing staff with resources and align with the New York State standards. Some of the things that we had talked about earlier in this cycle, budget challenges and developments. I had gone through some of this discontinuation of the federal monies associated with COVID-19. So it was really three programs: CARES, CARISA, and ARPA money. So those are ending. ARPA is the final program that will be ending September 30th, aligned with the federal fiscal year, which begins on October 1. Loss of rental income at the Harriman Center, so we're renting that to the Village of Harriman. They've constructed a village hall, so they'll be moving out shortly. Increasing contract transportation. So we've talked a lot about that. We're not only seeing growth in enrollment, but also the cost of contract transportation is going up because it's often linked with CPI, Consumer Price Index, and we've had record high inflation for the last few years. Health insurance premium for next year, plus 3%, a little over 3%, not so bad, really, relatively speaking. Could be much worse when you think about health insurance inflation. The OU capital project, OU BOCES capital project. So for the current year, a little under $1 million increase to our budget. For next year, it's like $1.2 million, which is a $238,000 increase. But eventually, they're going to be fully underway very soon. But then, again, that's a hit to the budget. ERS employer contribution rate increases. We talked about this, going from around 15% to 17%. And Michael, you had asked me a question at one of those meetings where I talked about this, and I answered the question. I said, essentially your question was, if the stock market is doing so well, and the retirement systems invest in the stock market and other investments, why is the rate going up, right? And so it's a good question, great question. And I answered you, I'm not sure, because there's usually a 5-year moving average with the state and local retirement system. And my colleague, Dr. Vias, sent me something that night that said DiNapoli, the state controller, had actually changed the methodology, the actuarial methodology related to the retirement system fairly recently. And they had a really good year in terms of the rate of return. I think it was 2021, and they decided at that point to do two things: to end the 5-year moving average smoothing. So, he had a really good year. So if you use the 5-year smoothing methodology, it would kind of tamp that really good year down. And then they also adjusted their assumed rate of return in the system. So that could have the impact of saying, on average, we're assuming we're going to make 6.5%. They lowered it to 5.9. So in general, that would mean in the future, if you're not hitting that, you might need to actually increase the contribution rates to meet your future obligations. So those two things, and then a bad year, it was 22 was okay, but 23, their fiscal year, they had a minus 4% return, so it required a rate increase. If they hadn't done that, it was, and actually at the time, they even said this is a bit of a risk, depending on what happens in the next couple of years, they wouldn't have needed that increase. So it was a good question. I wasn't spot on my answer because things had changed. You know, it's one of those things that it's not making the front page of the New York Times, you know, but it does have an impact on employers like ourselves. I have expiring contracts for the MWAA and EA, so it's not a big deal. It's just one of those things that creates a little uncertainty in next year's budget. So everybody's favorite slide, the 2% tax cap slide. So I will not go through everything. Needless to say, the 2% tax cap, it's a multi-step formula, and the 2% is a factor here in the formula, the allowable growth factor, and it's 2% or CPI, whichever is less. So it can never be more than 2% or 2. The cap for Monroe-Woodbury for next year is a little over 5%, which is a relatively high number. But that's because in the current year, if you recall, we had a 0% increase in the levy. So we had no increase in our levy for the current year. And the formula allows you to carry some of that room, if you will, in the cap over to the next year. So that's why it's a little over 5%. The good news is we're proposing to levy at 1.78%, so well below the cap. Fifth year in a row that we've been below the cap, so that's great. Moving on, state aid and tax levy. So we covered the tax levy. I'll just talk about state aid a little bit. So we're projecting to have about $88.7 million in state aid. That's a little over a $7 million increase from the current year. It's a little under 9% increase, so that's a good increase. What we're noticing is the foundation aid is fully phased in. It has been phased in. The current year was the third year of the phase-in. But foundation aid increased to some degree, CPI related. You know, there's a whole series of factors that go into that. But we're also noticing a big increase in transportation aid. So we talked about the expenses going up. The flip side of that, because it's an expense-based aid, is in the subsequent years, you're going to actually see more aid. And we've seen that, a big increase in transportation aid. So that's good news. Again, levy increase 1.78%. So moving on, so this is just a breakdown of the state aid. People think of it as a single program. It's not. It's multiple programs. Many are expense-driven, which means if we spend $1 this year, we receive some percentage of that, like in the case of transportation aid, 70% back in the subsequent year. Foundation aid, the factors that go into it to varying degrees, district wealth ratio. So that's measuring both income of residents and also the property tax wealth. Pupil need, the demographics of the pupil population. Enrollment's a big factor because it's actually literally based on the number of pupils you're serving. The consumer price index or inflation is part of that. And then the regional cost index. So that's a big factor. We get a bump of about 31% because we're in a higher cost of living area than, let's say, upstate New York. Moving on, district revenue by category. I would say the only real takeaway here is we're showing state aid at about 40% of our revenue. The levy's about 59%. About 9 or 10 years ago, state aid made up about 28 or 30%. So we're seeing a little shift from local tax base to state aid, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Let's see, superintendent's budget recommendation. So the superintendent makes a recommendation to the board adopts the budget, and then we put that budget before the public to decide, to vote directly on it. So we're proposing a $223.6 million budget. We talked about the levy, we've talked about state aid. This says total non-property tax revenues and other sources. So it's mostly state aid. There's some miscellaneous revenue in there. And then the final thing I wanted to point out is this assigned appropriated fund balance. So we're proposing to take $1 million of our fund balance and apply it. The word is assigned now. It used to be called appropriated to next year's budgets to balance the budget. If we were not to do that, it's like a give back. The tax levy would have to be increased by that amount. So our appropriation budget is equal to our revenue budget because by law, we have to have a balanced budget. So that's the budget recommendation. This just shows a budget-to-budget comparison. And you'll note that the last 3 years, we've seen some atypical increases in the budget, atypically large. Hopefully, inflation will begin to abate, and we'll see a more sort of normal range of budget-to-budget increases. Here is the tax levy comparison chart. And you note that we're at 1.78 for next year. Our recommendation, we were at 0 this year, and approximately 11 years ago, we're also at 1.78. So funny coincidence. It's just a coincidence. Let's see, contingent budget rules. So the contingent budget is adopted by a board when the residents of the community fail to adopt the budget on 2 separate occasions. So there's some mandatory cuts in the budget that need to be made. But the biggest, most onerous item is there can be no increase in the levy. So we would need a levy reduction of a little under 2.3 million. So that would be a combination in all likelihood of cuts to the budget, maybe use of reserves, use of unassigned fund balance. There's mandatory cuts that need to occur. Equipment comes out of the budget. We have in the budget a transfer to capital to buy school buses, $990,000. That would have to come out. Use of facilities, if there's an expense involved, would have to cease. So it's never a great thing for a school district to go on a contingent or austerity budget. That's the old name for it. But we talk about it because it is something that is a possibility. Upcoming budget dates. So here we're having our budget hearing. The mailer will be going out tomorrow, I think. So probably maybe by Saturday, some folks will have that. Definitely by next week. Crusader Chat, I believe we're going to cancel that because we haven't got a lot of questions. I'm going to go through a few questions we have gotten. And then the big day is May 21st, Tuesday, May 21st, the annual budget vote date at Central Valley Elementary School, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And June 18th is the statewide budget revote date. So we had a series of questions. I'm not sure if I should go through everything here. Maybe I'll go through it quickly.
Why don't you just pick highlights?
Okay. So the first question, can we have meetings regarding safety in our schools and from school shootings to vaping in bathrooms? So what it basically says, we've recently offered a variety of programs related to internet safety, safety for parents and students. We practice regular drills in school related to safety, both fire drills and evacuation drills. We're hosting a parent forum on May 16th called Don't Press Send. So again, that's parents only related to internet safety and social media. So we're trying to do, things related to that, school safety. Will security updates be included in this year, specifically North Main? Our building updates included in the budget proposal, specifically North Main. So I think I know where they work or send their kids to. So yeah, we've done a lot of district security updates slated for next year. Are the purchase of kiosks at the high school to sort of manage and control students in mostly congregate areas. We've initiated new school building maps and floor plans for security purposes. We're again reviewing and sort of analyzing the acquisition of exterior strobe lights on our buildings is one thing we do not have, and panic alarm systems. What's been done so all those things would be applicable to North Main. What's been done district-wide, also applicable to North Main. New classroom door locks, we've talked a lot about this stuff. We used a lot of that federal money for these items. Security shades on doors, we installed those. Security vestibules, either constructed at North Main, there is a vestibule, or we're planning to construct security vestibules as part of our capital project. We've done exterior classroom room numbering, so you can see that from the exterior of a building on the windows. The door access control project, we anticipate that'll be done by this summer. It's been a long time coming, but we had some long lead times on equipment, et cetera. And then we've done enhanced training and standard operating procedures related to safety. So we've done a lot in that area. Why are we purchasing more buses but not reestablishing the late buses on Fridays? So the way I answer this is we have a vehicle replacement plan that calls for periodic, typically annual replacement of buses that have reached the end of the useful life. Older buses, less reliable, more costly to repair. The decision to not offer late buses on Friday, I think that's been in place for a long time. I think it's an attempt to use scarce resources where the demand and need is greatest. So Friday, historically, would have less demand for a late bus than Monday through Thursday. So I think that's why we're doing that. And again, what I'm trying to say is that the vehicle replacement plan it's not exactly related to the late bus on a Friday. Can we include more hands-on programs where kids are learning life skills like plumbing, swimming, cooking, and financial literacy? So included in our 24-25 budget is approximately $1.5 million for career and technical education programs. So these programs offer students alternative career pathways in the building trades and other professions. We've increased our budgetary allocation in that area for this type of education. We have more slots for students for next year. So we have done some things in the area of budget development related to that. Life skills, I think, are also part of the ordinary curriculum and available to students at our schools. Final question, why does our district not have co-teacher sciences after 9th grade? Where's the budget for that? Why are we buying buses but not investing in the education plan? So I'm sort of addressing that from the budgetary perspective. We need reliable and safe buses to bring students to school. If students can't get to school, they can't learn. And I just think these items from a budget perspective are not really related. It's not an either or, buses or co-teaching. And I think that maybe requires a little bit more sort of analysis before we fully address it. So those are the questions that we received from the public, Michael. So that's all I had for
So
today.
just a reminder, because I see some students, they're feverishly taking notes. All of this is on our website. If you go online on our website, you'll see this presentation. You'll also see the questions. Am I correct, Carol?
Not yet, but they will.
But you will.
But
But this presentation, the presentation is online,
Yes, the presentation.
so that you can,
Questions for the end.
yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Do any of the board members have questions for Mr. Cahill?
So these were the questions that were originally submitted for the Crusader chat, but since you just went over it, the Crusader chat's going to be canceled.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. I also want to just thank administration, but also the finance area for helping us avoid a fiscal cliff. A lot of COVID monies were received by school districts, and they made decisions that now have caused them to have to lay off staff or make other decisions because those COVID funds weren't used effectively for other programs, and we haven't had to do that. So really appreciate the leadership and guidance there that was provided. Okay, so we'll move to the first and only speaker on the budget, which is Mr. Darrell McElroy of the Woodbury Teachers Association, Monroe-Woodbury.
Thank you. That's going to be a tough act to follow. Good evening. My name is Darrell McElroy. I'm the president of the Monroe-Woodbury Teachers Association. I'm here tonight on behalf of the MWTA to speak in support of the proposed 2024-25 budget. I believe that the budget presented by the superintendent is not only fiscally responsible, but also maintains current programs and staffing so that students will continue to get many of the supports that they need to be successful. On a personal note, I want to thank the superintendent for crafting this, her final budget, with a willingness to include all stakeholders in the process. We have worked together well over the past few years, and while she has certainly earned her retirement, I would be remiss if I did not thank her for her years of dedicated service to the students, staff, and community of Monroe-Woodbury. Being a superintendent has never been easy, but these last few years have probably been the hardest ever, and you will be missed. We are also grateful that we do not find ourselves in the position that some neighboring districts find themselves in and realize that resources are not infinite. But we also believe that we could be doing more for our students and hope that we can have a dialogue with the board about some additional priorities that will invest in our students and improve outcomes for them in the long term. I'm actually encouraged by some of the questions submitted by the community because that reaffirms what we've been saying for a long time, which is that when asked to spend on classroom resources, this community will support those asks. We happen to be halfway through National Teacher Appreciation Week, and today is School Nurse Appreciation Day. We are certainly grateful to our members for their efforts on behalf of the profession and our students and thank them for all that they do. When I speak with my members, they often bring forward concerns that center on students' needs because that is who they are. When we advocate for a reading curriculum, it is not because we want fancy new books. It is because we want to effectively teach kids how to read so that they can grow into successful young people. When we advocate for swipe systems to be installed, it's not because we simply want to make our lives easier. It is because we want to make our school buildings more secure for everyone. My members, along with other educators around the state, successfully advocated for the increased levels of state aid that Monroe-Woodbury received, and naturally would like to see resources allocated to things like full-time school psychologists at the K-1 level. Splitting staff across buildings to save money may be good for the bottom line, but we simply cannot expect 5- and 6-year-olds to only have problems on certain days of the week, or expect staff to triage the same situation each day, which only delays getting students the help they need. The students and staff need and deserve consistency, and our students will be better served and better off academically and emotionally if we can invest in these kinds of early interventions. And if we have the resources for consultants of all types year over year, then we should not have to make cuts to classroom-related staffing to make this type of thing happen either. One additional topic that will hopefully be a part of future budget discussions and perhaps even a capital improvement project is to finally address climate control in 6 out of our 7 buildings. It would be easy for me, because I sit in air conditioning all day, to disregard this concern, but I can't. We were proud to support last year's capital improvement project, and my members, I believe, were a key reason for its passage this time around. But as we are headed into the final weeks of the school year, it seems like the weather has finally decided to cooperate with it being spring and the temperatures are rising. Would you believe that in New York, there is no maximum temperature limit? There's a minimum where it's too cold to have kids sit in a classroom and have teachers in a classroom, but there is no maximum. For some, it may seem like students and adults are whining, but these rooms are too darn hot. How can a student learn if they are literally falling asleep because it's too warm? How can they be expected to concentrate during an exam? How can the adults effectively do their jobs if they are suffering negative health impacts from extreme heat? I personally went to Harriman Heights as a kindergartner, Pine Tree Elementary School from grades 1 through 6. That's 4 minutes, so I'm going to try to wrap up. But just because I had to suffer through it doesn't mean that the kids today and the adults today have to continue to do it. Again, we're going to advocate at the state level for legislation to address this issue, and anybody who's interested can certainly lobby the legislators too. But hopefully we'll have additional conversation to be forward-thinking and proactive. I would like to just wrap up by thanking you for the opportunity to address the board. I would encourage my members and members of the community to vote yes. See, I get to do that. Vote yes on the budget on May 21st, which would be a great birthday gift for me and my birthday twin, Miss Huck. And lastly, if I don't do this, I'm going to get in trouble. Happy birthday to my mother, who's turning 21 today, and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers and those who fulfill that role. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up on the agenda is a small update presentation on Friday Night Lights.
It's hot.
Hello all, my name is Howard Harrison, Director of Athletics. Good evening, fellow board members, and Mr. President, Mrs. Rodriguez, and Cabinet. I hope everyone's doing well. I wanted to provide an update for the upcoming 2024 football season. The varsity team has nine regular season games scheduled. We have 4 home games for the varsity football team. 3 evening games will start at 6 p.m. We have a Saturday afternoon game, which is going to be at 3 p.m. The reason it's Saturday afternoon, it's a holiday that week, so it had to be pushed to Saturday afternoon. The home games are as follows. We have a Friday, September 13th game versus Cornwall, which is at 6 p.m. We have a Friday, September 20th home game, which is against Our Lady of Lords, which is at 6 p.m. And Saturday, October 5th, is versus Pine Bush, and that's the 3 p.m. game. And Friday, October 18th, versus Kingston, is at 6 p.m. The remaining away games, just for your information, is, or the remaining away games are Friday, September 6th, we open up against North Rockland at 6:30 p.m. Friday, 27th, against Newburgh, 6 p.m. Thursday, October 10th, Washingtonville, 6 p.m. Friday, October 25th, versus Valley Central, is at 7 p.m. And Friday, November 1st, is our last game versus Middletown, which is at 6 p.m. Going forward with the football season, we will be, for ticketing, we'll be able to reserve tickets in advance. We will be going with the GoFan ticketing platform this year, and that's going to make ticketing and entering the games more efficient. We will be using that platform. We've been working closely with MCC to provide this platform for our students in the community. We will use the platform prior to the start of the football season just to test it out and make sure we work out any kinks so we can have a smooth launching for the 2024 football season. I just want to say, as your athletic director, thank you for the support that you provide to our athletic department and for our kids and just for the community. And thank you again for welcoming me here as the athletic director. It's been a real great time that I've had so far. And also to the fellow board members, please, just a token of our appreciation that athletic department is in those nice purple bags that sit in front of you. So I just want to say thank you for everything, and everyone have a great night.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have questions?
Of course. I'll go first. As far as the ticketing platform, is there going to be a limit per person, and will it be staggered like it was last year where it was opened up to different groups of individuals at different times?
We will follow similar to what we did last year as far as once we get to capacity, we'll have student tickets, community tickets, and then you also have visitor tickets, so we will do something similar to that for last year.
Okay.
Anything else?
Question?
I think that was it. Well, I'm thrilled to hear that they're Friday nights, so I think that was the biggest thing as far as, my people that had reached out to me. So I'm happy to hear that we were able to make it work, and hopefully the ticketing system works well.
And thank you very much, because not only, there's not one game, all 3 night games are Friday nights. So I think that really says a lot, and we appreciate that.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
More questions? Good. Everybody have a great night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda, approval of the minutes. May I have a motion? Motion. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Action items, approval of the BOE meeting dates. Any questions or discussion? Motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Personnel, Ms. Hawk, do you
Thank
have,
you. I'd just like to request approval for the items listed under personnel this evening.
does anyone have any questions? May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Business and financial.
Thank you. I would also respectfully request approval of the business and financial items 9.1 through 9.5, and I would just like to thank and acknowledge Mirna Grual for a donation to the MW Music Department, a violin.
Very nice. Any questions? Have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Committees on special education and preschool. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Last up is adjournment into executive session for purpose of discussing legal updates. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.